Welcome to part 3 of the OSPF version 2 video demo. So this time, we will be configuring OSPF passive interfaces. Alright? Now, when you say passive interface, okay, so the passive interface command prevents routing updates from being sent through the specified router interface. So this is commonly done to reduce traffic on the LANs as they do not need to receive dynamic routing protocol communication. Okay, now on this video demo, you will see and we will use the passive interface command to configure a single interface as passive. So you will also configure, okay, OSPF so that all interfaces on the router are passive by default, and then enable OSPF routing advertisements on the selected interfaces. Alright, so let's start. So first, we need to configure a passive interface. Okay, so we issue a show IP OSPF interface G000 command on R1. So let's do that. Let us issue here. Okay, so let me enlarge the window. Okay, so enable. Let's do it. So we issue the show IP OSPF interface, right? So G0/0/0 here. All right. So in here, you'll see that the hello packets, okay, is set to 10. Okay, it's 10 seconds, and the dead timer is at 40 seconds. Okay, so notice that the timer indicating when the next hello packet is expected. Okay, so as what I'm saying, hello packets are sent every 10 seconds and are used between OSPF routers to verify that the neighbors are up. So take note that the next or the hello due, okay, is on this time, okay, 06. All right. So next would be, we are going to issue the passive interface command to change the G000 interface on R1 to passive. Alright, so how are we going to do this? Okay, so we will be using, okay, so the passive interface command inside the OSPF process. So let's do it. Okay, so that would be configure terminal. So interface, okay, we have to go to the router OSPF process, which is router OSPF1. In there, that is where we configure passive interface. So the command would be passive interface, okay, and then we have to define G0/0/0 there. All right. So next is, we are going to reissue the show IP OSPF interface G00 command here. So do show IP OSPF interface G0/0/0 command. Okay, so to verify that this interface G000 is now passive. Let's see. All right. Now, if you will observe there, so you've got, all right, so where no hello, all right, no hellos, passive interface. Okay, now we need to go to R2 and R3 to verify whether the interface, okay, or the LAN on R1, okay, is there, since we already have defined passive interface there. Okay, so let's see. So again, when you execute the passive interface command on the interface, that interface will no longer accept, okay, updates on the router, because basically the LAN interfaces doesn't need, or it's no importance for that interface to accept, okay, so the router updates. So basically, the router updates should be limited among the routers, right? So let's go to R2 here and let's try to verify that. Okay, so enable. Okay, so show IP route. Okay, so let's see, can you still see 172.16.3.0 here? You'll have it there. All right. So 172.16.3.0. Also, let's do it on router 3. All right. So enable show IP route. All right. So 172.16.3.0 is still there. Okay. So it's still available in there. Okay. Now what we're going to do next is to set a passive interface as default on a router. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we are going to issue the command show IP OSPF neighbor on R1 to verify that R2, okay, is listed as an OSPF neighbor. So let's do it. So let's go to R1, okay, and type in do show IP OSPF neighbor. So do show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay. So as you can see there, okay, so the neighbor is still there. That's 22.22.22.22. That's router 2. Okay. All right. Next. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to issue the passive interface default command on R2 to set the default for all the OSPF interfaces as passive. Okay. So let's go to R2 here and let's do that. So in here, configure terminal. All right. So router OSPF1. So let's type in passive interface default. Okay. So when you do this, all the interfaces on R2 will be put into a passive interface. All right. So in that case, we have there some sort of notification. Okay. So from full to down, see this? Okay. Full to down. Right. So neighbor down, interface down, or detached. Now we are going to reissue the show IP OSPF neighbor command on R1. After the dead timer expires, R2 will no longer be listed as an OSPF neighbor. All right. So let's do that. Let's go to R1 and type in show IP OSPF neighbor. R1. Okay. So do show IP OSPF neighbor. Okay. So see, we don't have here a neighbor anymore because there would be no more updates. Okay. So coming from R2. All right. So if you are going to R2 and then try to get the interface serial 000, let's do it. Go to R2. Okay. So do show IP OSPF. Okay. Interface serial 0/0/0. Do show IP OSPF. Interface serial 0/0/0. Invalid interface type. Do show IP in brief. That should be serial 0/1/0. Okay, let's do it again. So serial 0/1/0 there. All right. So again, you'll have here no hellos. That's passive interface. Okay. So if all interfaces on R2 are passive, then no routing information is being advertised. So in this case, R1 and R3 should no longer have a route, okay, onto the network on R2. Okay. So you can verify that via the command show IP route command. So let's do it. Let's go back to R1 here. Okay, so let's issue do show IP route. So see, so we have no route. Okay, so going to anywhere. All right, and so with R3, okay, so do show IP route there. show IP route, right? So we don't have routes anymore. All right. So on R2, what we're going to do is to issue the no passive interface command so that the router will send and receive OSPF routing updates. Okay. So after entering this command, we will see an informational message that the neighbor adjacency has been established with R1. Okay. After the no passive interface on the serial connections, right? And so with R3. All right. So let's do it. Okay. So, okay. So what we're going to do here on R2, we have to remove, okay, the passive interface on serial 0. What is that interface? This one. Okay, serial 010. Let's remove that. Okay. So that would be, are we inside the process? So let's do it. Router OSPF. Okay. So let me remove no passive interface. Right. So that should be serial 0/1/0. Let me verify the interface. Okay. So again, serial 010 there. Serial 010. Right. So we already have removed it, and afterwards or after some time, okay, so there should be now adjacency, as you see here. Okay, so we have now adjacency. Okay, so and therefore when we execute here, do show IP route, right? So we can now see there, okay, so 1.0 and also 192.168, okay, 1.0 there. So but then we haven't yet configured that. Okay, so again, this should be no passive interface. Okay, since we have set this to default, this is serial 011, right? So serial 0/1/1, right? So after that, you're gonna have also adjacency with R3. All right, so there you go. So we have here adjacency. So we are expecting now here, show IP route. There should now be route. All right. So beware of configuring passive interfaces as much as possible. Okay. So we only configure this on the interface where a NAN router is connected to it. All right. So specifically, if a LAN is connected to it, then you configure passive interface in there. All right. So let's check that. So there should be connectivity here. Okay. So you have to fast forward time. Okay. So do we have now? Let's check that. Okay. So do show IP route. Okay. So from R2, do we have route to 192.168.2.0? It's in there. Okay. So from R3, okay. So IP route, do we have route to 172.16.1.0? 172.16.1.0, it's there. Right? So there should be connectivity now. Okay, so simple PDU. Right? So it's successful now. And this. Right? So also, we have this. Okay. Okay. Successful. Right? And this successful. Okay, and this successful. Okay, so again, when we use the passive interface default, all the interfaces on that router will set to passive interface, and therefore it will no longer accept or send an update. Okay, so that is why if you use the default, try to remove the no passive interface, okay, or with no passive interface command, to remove the interfaces where the router is connected to. All right. So that's it. Okay. So again, let's do it. Do show IP protocols. Okay. So passive interface. is only set to gigabit Ethernet 00. Right? So also on R2, let's verify that. Alright, so this would be show IP protocols. So we have passive interfaces. Okay, this is on R2. Okay, using the default earlier. That's why all the gigabit Ethernet there are set to passive interface, including the loopback and the VLAN 1 there. So we removed the serial 0/1/0. Okay, so this one from the passive interfaces, and also this serial 011. Okay, so again, beware of using the passive interface default, because that interface, when set to passive interface, will no longer send and accept routing updates. All right, and the recommendation is it is being configured only usually, or most of the time, sorry, on the LAN interfaces. Okay, so let's do that on R3. Okay, so do show IP protocols here on R3. Sorry, so we're inside now. So this should be show IP protocol. Right? So we don't have passive interface here. Okay, so let's configure it. Configure terminal. Okay, and then router OSPF1. Okay, passive interface, again, let's use default because we just have to remove one interface. Okay, so rather than defining all the interfaces except that one, which is the serial on the passive interface, so default. So again, so we are disconnecting, okay, R3 because of that passive interface set also on the serial 011. Let's see that. So this should be do show IP protocols. Okay, so take a look at this. All interfaces are set to passive, okay, because of the default. So what we're going to do is to remove serial 011 here specifically. So let's do that, serial 011. So after that, no passive interface, serial 0/1/1. All right, so do show IP protocol. Okay, so do show IP protocol. Okay, so we have removed serial 011 in there, and therefore after that, okay, so we still have the synchronized network. Let's check that. Okay. All right. So that's it for the configuration of the OSPF passive interface.